and simple card. This is an example of a clean and simple design, which I've written about that type of card on my website. So please check that out. You can see that in the description below. But you're going to need some cardstock. You're going to need a lot of white cardstock, and then if you want to choose a particular color, you can see I've got yellow and purple and pink. And I'm also using this Hollyhock die, but you could use any kind of floral die or any other type of die if you want to. I'm going to need some glue and some markers. I'm going to be using this score pal as well. And so to start, I'm going to make the base of my card. And so I'm going to use my score pal here to line that up and to just score it down the center so I can get a nice crisp fold. And I usually run this bone folder over it twice just so that I can get a good fold. And typically I use that bone folder to go over that crease instead of just using my hands, but whatever works for you will work. So you've got the base of your card ready, and now we're going to just start layering. So I'm going to work with this pink, and I've cut this so that it is just slightly smaller than the face of my card. And if you want exact instructions for making this card, just head over to my website and join my maker library, or if you've already joined, just download this, the instruction, the tutorial, step-by-step guide. Is going to give you all the cut sizes and all the supplies that I use as well. But I'm using that Barely Art glue, and just going to put a little bit on and glue down this pink layer. And you can see how I've got just a slight border or slight edge of white around that. And so I usually cut each of my layers about 1/4 of an inch or so smaller than the preceding layer. Okay, I have already cut out my hollyhocks with my Big Shot. And so what I'm doing now is just trying to figure out exactly how I want them to look, and I'm getting ready to use some markers to add some color. Some of these hollyhock flowers came loose or cut loose. They were designed that way, and so I'm trying to think about how I want to use them. So I'm using watercolor markers. You can use alcohol ink, you can use regular markers, whatever you have. You can use colored pencils if that's what you prefer, but I haven't used these markers very much, and so I wanted to try them out and thought that it would be fun to use on this project. And so I'm just kind of checking out to see, you know, what different shades of green and pink I have here. And the good thing about these watercolor markers, similar to alcohol markers, you can layer color, so you can get kind of a richer effect with them. And so I'm going to do that a little bit in this video, but it's very hard to see, and I apologize for the quality of this video. So I'm going to start with the green and kind of color in the stems first. You know, coloring can be, I think I've said this on to you before, but you know, it can be very therapeutic, which obviously from the rise of all the adult coloring books on the market, that's obvious. And I know that it's a little bit hard to see these die cuts as I am coloring them because they're white and it's on a white piece of paper, but I did put that paper down underneath because I wanted to protect my work surface, my table surface. Maybe next time I'll try a different color of paper, but I think this was a scrap. To be honest, this is probably a scrap paper. I hardly ever throw away paper, so if I've made a mistake on something, instead of throwing it away, I just stick it in my pile so that I can use it as scrap, and that's probably what I've done here. So I am just getting in with this green color and trying to get the stems done. So now I'm going to start using my pinks, and I'm using two different shades, and I'm going to just color in these hollyhocks. Now the thing about clean and simple cards is that you have a lot of white space, and you don't use a whole lot of color. I'm going to use just a couple of colors, two or three colors, and that's it. And most of it's going to be white space. There's not going to be a lot of embellishments or extra things because that's obviously not in the name of this style, clean and simple. It's just a very clean and classic style of card with a lot of white space. So, really we're going to have this one image, as you saw in the card at the very beginning. We're going to have this one image with just a couple of colors. I think maybe on one card I used 3 colors if you count that green stem color. But 2 to 3 colors, and we can add a sentiment. But the only other thing I'm really going to do to this card is, and you'll see this a little bit later on, I'm going to add a little bit of texture. So it's not color, it's not an embellishment, it's not any kind of major technique. It's just really just using score lines to add some texture, and we'll see that a little bit later on. But I'm using different shades of this pink right now to layer in some color. And like I said before, I haven't really used these markers. They were a gift, and I've just not had time to really play with them. So I'm kind of playing as I'm going along here and trying to work out my technique. I think in addition to markers and colored pencils, what would be really nice to use, especially with floral designs, probably would be chalks, some pastels. You could get some really nice looks there. So I'm just adding that color to my hollyhock stalks, and there are a few loose hollyhock blooms that will color in as well. One of the things I like about clean and simple cards is that you really don't need a whole lot of materials. I would, even though I used a die here to cut out these hollyhocks. You don't have to have a die cutting machine. If you've got a Cricut or Silhouette, you could have cut something out there. But even if you don't have that, what you can do is just use a stamp, and then you can color in with markers, with inks, whatever you like. You don't need anything really fancy. I use that Score Pal because it's just a great tool that I happen to have. But long before I got that, I was, just trying to eyeball score lines and using that bone folder, and it worked well. So you really don't have to have a whole lot, something to color with, a stamp or some other image. And I just love these pinks. They're just so vibrant here. But I think one of the reasons that I do like card making and paper craft in general is that while you can use lots of stuff, you can use lots of materials, and you can always be buying more crafting supplies. You don't have to, and you can create some really beautiful cards and other projects with very few supplies, very simple supplies. And this project really is nothing more than some cardstock, some type of image, glue, and markers. All right, I mentioned before that I was going to add a little bit of texture, and really what I'm going to be doing is adding 3 score lines. They're an eighth of an inch apart, I believe, and I'm going to add them right on the left side of this white cardstock, and that is just going to be the only other embellishment that I have on this card. And as I said before, I usually run my bone folder over these lines twice just to make sure that I get a nice crisp score. And it's very hard to see, I think, in the video, but there are 3 lines there. And now I'm going to take my Hollyhocks that I have spent so much time there coloring, and I'm going to add them to the right side of this card. Since I have the score lines on the left, I'm going to add my Hollyhocks to the right. Again, I'm just kind of working out placement where I want them. I could put them exactly the way they were in the die, and I kind of do that, but you don't have to. Must have missed a stem here. Yep. I've missed a stem. Let me get that in. Okay, I'm going to take this Barely Art glue with that really fine tip on it, because these Hollyhocks are small, and I think the fine tip will help me have better control with the glue. So I'm just going to add some glue all the way up and down this stem. And I'm really just dotting it on. Because that tip is so fine, sometimes it's hard to get the glue to come out in a steady stream. And sometimes that's very annoying, but actually with this particular project, since those Hollyhocks are so small, it kind of works better to dot. So sometimes I'm just dotting, other times I'm trying to get a really thin line of glue. So I know people are really picky about what type of glue that they use. So if you use Barely Art, I'd like to know. But if you don't, I'd like to know what you do use. Barely Art has worked really well for me without, messing up projects, because I can mess up a project with some glue pretty quickly. All right, I'm using my tweezers to help me flip this over, and then I'm getting ready to add this to my card. And it helps that I had already figured out where I wanted to put this down, so that once I've got that glue on there, I can just go straight to it. All right, let's get this next one glued up. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just adding glue. And I'm just going to add it all the way down the stem. When I saw this hollyhock die, though, I just had to have it because I love hollyhocks. It's just one of those old-fashioned flowers, and I sometimes grow those in my flower garden, and I just had to have this die. And so I made several versions of this card. I used different colors, and you'll see that a little bit later. All right, so now I just need to get these loose ones. It's good to have a pair of tweezers to help manage some of these small pieces, although I'm not always an expert at handling my tweezers. As you can see, I dropped that one. But it can help make putting or adding these small pieces a lot easier, or if you have to adjust them. All right, one more, I think. For some reason, I colored both sides of that petal or that bloom, but that's okay. Um, that might not be a bad idea. Might help you avoid some mistakes as you put the card together. All right, so this is the card front. And so now we just need to add it to the pink layer. And other than a sentiment, we're done. Just adding that glue in. I'm always worried when I make cards if I don't have things either glued down well, or maybe if I'm using double-sided tape, have enough so that none of these layers fall off. I'm always worried about that. But Barely Art Glue actually does a great job with holding, so it's one of the reasons I like it. You notice that this face layer is also just a little smaller than the pink layer, and that's so that you get that nice layering effect. And so this is our pink clean and simple card. Lots of white space, just a couple of colors. This next one you see I added a color, but I've got blues and purples and yellows and oranges. But all of these are pretty much the same design. It's just different colors, but they all show what a clean and simple card could look like. If you like this project, please click like below and the subscribe button. And if you want the full tutorial, go to beverlypayne.com.